Fantastic. All right, so hello and welcome to Lily's Show and Tell series. I'm Cassandra Nieves, the Lily Web Committee Chair. Lily stands for Lifelong Information Literacy, and we're a group of librarians and information professionals who work to promote lifelong information literacy. Before we begin, I just have a couple of quick housekeeping items. First of all, this session is going to be recorded, and the recording will be available on the Show and Tell webpage by the end of the week. I'll have that link in the chat shortly. Feel free to put any of your questions into the chat. I'll keep an eye on the chat and note down the questions for our speaker at the end. And finally, if you want to learn more about Lily or presenting on your own show and tell event, my email address is going to be in my Zoom name, and you can feel free to email me at any time. So now we're going to move on to our speaker. We have Kelsey Nordstrom-Sanchez. Take it away, Kelsey.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so happy to be here with all of you. So let me just go ahead and share my screen and get myself all situated. All right, so like I said, my name is Kelsey Nordstrom-Sanchez, and I'm a research and instruction librarian at Cal State Monterey Bay. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about a book club that I started with my local Juvenile Hall, Monterey County Juvenile Hall. And so the title of my presentation is Serving Incarcerated Youth at Juvenile Hall, Reading Together to Reduce Recidivism. Let's see. Okay, so I am a librarian, like I said, at Cal State Monterey Bay, and I specialize in ethnic and gender studies, religion, philosophy, history, and psychology. I'm in my second year of librarianship, so I still really do feel like a baby librarian, constantly learning and growing every day. I did put my email address on this slide, but I'll make sure to pop my email address in the chat at the end of my presentation, just so we can stay in touch or if anyone has any follow-up questions. And this is just a picture of our library at Cal State Monterey Bay. Before we begin, I would like to just read this land acknowledgement to all of you. So California State University, Monterey Bay resides on the indigenous homeland of the Esselen people, also known as the Carmelano, Monterey Band, and Rumsen. If you'd like to donate to the Esselen tribe of Monterey County, I've included the URL on this slide. Their website is www.esselentribe.org. So I wanted to take a quick minute for everyone to put in where they are located in the chat, but we've already been working on that. So thank you, everybody. Hello, I see some local people from California, and then I see some people from all over. So thank you so much for being here with me today. Okay, so the agenda for our presentation today is first, we're going to talk a little bit about some of incarcerated youth statistics and why this is such a pervasive problem in the United States. After that, I'm going to share with you all a little bit about Expanding Information Access for Incarcerated People initiative. This initiative is a partnership with San Francisco Public Library's Jail and Reentry Services and ALA. And they're just doing really wonderful things for people that are incarcerated, and then also librarians and library staff who work in the carceral system. I'm also going to talk about how I got started at Juvenile Hall. I'm going to share about Juvenile Hall's library. I'm going to talk about some of the funding and, how funding has made this program possible. And then I'd also like to share some of the book club activities that we've done and lessons that I have learned through this whole process. So just to get started, while rates of incarcerated youth are on the decline in the United States in the last few years, this is still really such a pervasive problem in the United States that affects primarily Black, and Latino youth. So in one day, on October 27th in 2021, nationally, 24,000 youth were held in residential placement facilities, and this includes facilities that are like Juvenile Hall. When it comes to how long youth are being incarcerated, in 2021, half of the youth that were in juvenile hall or similar placements were there longer than 117 days. And half of the youth were in placement for fewer than 30 days. And so this is really common when it comes to juvenile hall. There are some youth that will be at juvenile hall for years while their cases are being tried. For some youth, it's kind of more of a revolving door where, they're detained. Maybe they're detained for less similar offenses or less intense offenses. I can't think of the right word. And so, they can be in placement and then they move on to another institution, perhaps, or they are, returned back home. So in 2021, for every 100,000 Black youth in the United States, 228 were in a residential placement facility like juvenile hall. And so for Hispanic youth, this was 57 youth out of 100,000. And for white youth, it was 49 out of 100,000. And in 2021, Black youth accounted for 42% of youth held in facilities like juvenile hall. So, like I said, this is still really a very pervasive problem, primarily affecting Black and Brown youth. And so, while rates are decreasing, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. And so these statistics were from the US Department of Justice Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Program. And I did put the link in there if you all are interested in, reading more statistics about youth. It's a really fantastic website that does have some reliable information on it. Now, you're probably wondering, okay, so where's the statistics about how many incarcerated youth have access to libraries? Unfortunately, there really is not a lot of publicly available information about library services that are available to all incarcerated people in the United States. So that's, youth incarcerated in juvenile hall, that is people in detention centers, people that are just incarcerated in the carceral system. There really is not a lot of information, which can be frustrating. So I'd like to draw your attention to a really fantastic initiative. It's called Expanding Information Access for Incarcerated People Initiative. I bet some of you have heard of this. It's a partnership with San Francisco Public Library's Jail and Reentry Services Program and the ALA. I did include a QR code at the bottom of the screen where it will take you to San Francisco Public Library's website where you can learn more about this initiative. It's really a fantastic initiative. It was born out of a Mellon grant, and that's what's helped it move along. But some of the really exciting things coming out of this initiative are that the folks involved in it are creating new standards for library services for the incarcerated and detained. And so these are going to replace some of those older standards. On their website, they have a really cool interactive map where you can kind of scroll around and see, where library services are for incarcerated people. And you can see where, some of these services are missing. I encourage everybody to take a look at that. And that is on the website with that QR code. This initiative has also born some really fantastic professional development videos. I encourage everyone to check those out. They're really informative and very well done. And then this initiative is also responsible for 2 white papers that have more recently come out. One of the white papers is on digital literacy in the carceral system, and then another one is on technology in carceral facilities. So I'm really excited to see how these outcomes really flourish from this initiative. So we'll have to all just keep our eyes peeled. So just a little bit about my background and how I really got involved with juvenile hall, as an academic librarian. So I've always really been passionate about social justice issues. When I was an undergrad student, I got to work in different classrooms all along the Monterey Peninsula, where most of the students were on the lower socioeconomic end. And it just really ignited a passion in me for helping people. And so after I graduated from college, I went on to law school where I worked in many different internships, serving people from underserved communities, such as people that were experiencing homelessness, people that were experiencing domestic violence, a lot of asylees and refugees. And in these one on one conversations with people, I really realized that what I was doing was helping to provide them information that they really were not able to find on their own. And so that's what really inspired me to pursue my MLIS. While I was, doing my MLIS, I was learning a lot more about prison libraries. And with my law background, it really made me interested in the legalities of prison libraries and how they function within the carceral system. So when it comes to juvenile hall, this, Cal State Monterey Bay, I'm an alum, and this is also my hometown. So I knew, after I got my education, I wanted to come back to my local community and I wanted to give back and try to make some type of positive impact. While I was growing up in this area, I had a lot of friends and people that I knew that were incarcerated at juvenile hall. And just, knowing about their backgrounds and some of the traumas that they have experienced, it's always, made me very interested in ways that I can get involved now as an adult and, make a positive impact on some of our local youth. So when I first figured out that I wanted to work with juvenile hall as an academic tenure track librarian here at CSUMB, this program was a part of my professional application. So giving back to my local community. It's also tied into my library's mission and values. So one of our values is serving the greater community. And we value social justice and service to the greater community. We promote active service and civic engagement, especially within the Tri-County area. So I felt like this potential program really was a good fit, not only for me, but also to kind of further my library's mission statement and those values. So this is Monterey County Juvenile Hall. Basically, how I got started is I started calling Juvenile Hall and asking to be connected with someone who was in charge of programming. And, it wasn't always really easy to get through. It was a lot of, leave a message, leave your name, we'll get back to you. And one time when I called, I got really lucky and I was connected with the probation officer who does outreach for the facility. And we just had a really wonderful conversation. I asked him, do you all have a library? Do you have library staff? Is there a librarian? And he did let me know that yes, there is a library. However, there is no library staff, there is no librarian, and there's no funding to support a position like that. And so just after talking with him, he let me know that the students, the youth that are incarcerated there, they love to read. And so through some brainstorming with him, we came up with, well, you know what, let's try to have a book club. They had never had a book club, but the officer that I was working with was just so supportive of any kind of new programming in the facility. So that's really how I got started, just kind of sort of cold calling and seeing what services they had available. While I was waiting to get in touch with Monterey County Juvenile Hall, I also called some of the local public libraries to see if there were any partnerships between the public libraries and Juvenile Hall or the county jail. And there were also there were no partnerships there. So I knew that this was sort of bridging a gap where there was a lack of services. So just a little more about library access at Juvenile Hall. So the youth incarcerated at Juvenile Hall, they do not have any access to computers or other technologies. This is a picture of the library on the right-hand side. So it is a small library. There's no staff, no librarian. Like I said, there's no partnerships with any local public libraries that I know of. Majority of the books in the library were very, very outdated and very damaged. So one of the first things we did as an activity with some of the youth were we were weeding some of these books. And they had a lot of fun with that. And it was a great opportunity for us to really build rapport with one another, because we had about 13 students at that time. So all of us in this little tiny library, looking through books, looking through all the titles, checking for damages. It was a fun experience for them. So there's also no check-in or check-out system at the library. It's sort of like an honor system, but they don't have any way to really keep track of who has what books. And then typically the youth can visit the library once a week. Okay, so bridging the gap with book club. When I brought this program idea to my library dean, she was so supportive. I honestly really can't thank her enough. She was so supportive, and she said, you know what, I can give you $500 from some donor funds to get you started. And so I was thrilled with the $500. But as you all know, $500 is not a lot because books are very, very expensive. But I was very excited to get my start. So currently we have 8 students that are in the book club. We started with 14, and it really does fluctuate. It fluctuates because, some students are not there for a long-term basis. Some of them are just kind of awaiting their court sentencing, and then they can be transferred out of our facility and into one of the youth centers, or they can actually go home. Something else that, does affect our book club numbers are if someone is, doing something that they are not supposed to be doing, they can lose their privileges to attend some of these programs. The book club does consist of a group of youth that is called the dorm group or the purple group. And basically that means that they are the students that have been incarcerated at the facility for the longest amount of time. And they're also the students that have the most privileges. They're allowed to attend the most programs, and they've really had good behavior and built trust with the staff. So all of the youth in the book club they identify as men, and they are anywhere from 15 years old to 21 years old. And they're all also Hispanic or Latinx. Now, I'm sure you're probably wondering, okay, it's juvenile hall. Why are there youth that are over the age of 18? Well, more recently, Governor Newsom has closed down the youth prisons in California. And so people that were incarcerated at the youth prisons are now being transferred back to their local juvenile detention centers. And so now the maximum age at juvenile detention centers is, I believe, 25. So youth can be incarcerated at the detention centers until they are 25, and then they can be transferred to more adult facilities. So that's why the age range can kind of vary. So the reading levels for the youth in book club are anywhere from first grade to high school. Now, I'm not the one who has tested any of the students, but this is information that I did receive from the County of Education and some of the teachers that work with the county and work with the students. They let me know that it was really a wide range of reading levels. All the youth in the book club have been impacted by gang violence. They're all waiting felony sentencing in juvenile court or adult court. And what often happens is they can begin in juvenile court and then be transferred to adult court, or vice versa. In the book club, there is a youth who has been there the longest, and he's been incarcerated now for 4 years. He's still awaiting sentencing. And so that can be really difficult for the youth to not have clear answers about how much time they will be serving. So, like I said, the initial $500 got me started. It provided 2 months of books and then also supplies that we needed. So, quickly, very quickly, I realized that if I really wanted this program to be able to grow, that I needed some funding, right? So what I did was I started researching different grants that I could apply for. And then in the meantime, to keep the club going, I tried to use free resources. Like, for example, I would print out poems from the internet and give all the students copies of the poems, and we would have our book club related on those poems. We would also do short stories, just kind of anything that I could get for free online and, print at my library kept us going for several months. I ended up applying for a Pacific Library Partnership Innovation and Technology grant. And I did win that grant, thankfully. I'm so thankful to PLP for their generous gift for this program. So the grant covers a monthly book, um, copies for all the students in book club. They also generously gave us $3,000 for new books to add to the library collection, which is so exciting. And also they gave funding for supplies needed for any of our creative activities. So if you are interested in learning more about this grant, the website is www.plpinfo.org. Okay, so first things first. Before, I had my first book club meeting with the youth, I was very anxious. I was nervous. I just was not sure what to expect. I had never visited a juvenile detention center ever. And the things that I had read and seen in the news, you know, it's not always positive, right? So before our first meeting, I had to go in because the background check is pretty extensive, which is a good thing, right? We want to have those extensive background checks for people working with youth. So completing the background check and then coming into the facility and, being brought back into the holding area and being fingerprinted, it really hit me that, wow, youth are incarcerated here. Like, this is where I'm going to be coming, and this is where we're going to be doing book club. So I was nervous, but I was really excited. I was really excited to get started. So during our first meeting, what I tried to do was talk to the youth about, like, generally, what are they interested in? What careers are they interested in? And then I really just asked them, well, what do you like to read? We also collaboratively created some book club rules. And some of the most important rules to the students were they wanted an atmosphere where there was mutual respect, trust, and where this could be a safe place for them to share. And so I will say, there are some growing pains during our first meeting. They didn't know me, I didn't know them. And, trust is definitely something that has to be earned, especially in that environment. They're not going to trust or respect you just because you are an adult or a librarian coming into the system. So, the first meeting was a little bit rough. I remember part of my lesson plan was playing a TED talk about the magic of, book clubs and what it could do to really transform your brain. And, halfway through the TED talk, a couple students like fell asleep, put their heads down, and some of the other students were like, yeah, we're not interested in this. So the first meeting was a little bit rough, but I'm happy to report that as the meetings have gone on and the youth have, gotten used to me and I've gotten used to them, and we've been able to build solid rapport, that things have gotten much better. Something else I will say to this day is that after every book club session, the youth are like, okay, well, when are you coming back? Are you going to come back? Please come back. So, they've been let down by a lot of adults in their lives. And so I think it's really important, if you do start a book club or some kind of programming with youth that are incarcerated, to just keep in mind that a lot of the adults have abandoned them or walked out on them in their lives. So, making sure that you can be somebody who does show up, who is reliable, who shows up and does what they say they're going to do, is really important when it comes to building trust with youth that are incarcerated. So one of our first activities that we did was we read The Rose That Grew from Concrete, written by Tupac Shakur. And this was the first book I started with, truthfully, because when I was researching activities to do, there was a lot of information out there about how, book clubs or even creative writing professors have used this text and had a really positive outcome with students. So I thought, this is fantastic. Let's go with this for our first book. So one of the activities we did was I asked the students to remix some of the poems from the book. So, taking Tupac's first two lines and then transforming that poem and adding in their own writing or their own lines. And, I explained to them that with writing and anything that we do in this class, there really is no right or wrong as long as you are expressing yourself, and I let them know, like, none of this work is going to be graded. There is no pressure in that aspect. So we also had a big conversation about Tupac's poems and how a lot of them were still relevant today, in regards to, racism, politics, police brutality that still occurs. And so the students really did relate to his writing. I also played some YouTube videos of Tupac speaking because he was a very eloquent communicator. And so the students really related to this book. I think they enjoyed this book. And so something else that I do is I've given the students all composition notebooks and sketchbooks, and the facility allows them to keep these, or they can decide they want to share some of their work with me. And so they have that option to either keep their work private to themselves or share that work with me. And so this activity, a lot of the students did share their poetry, which was really beautiful. And it was a really cool opportunity because a lot of the students would write, duolingual poems. They would write some of the lines in English and then include some of the lines in Spanish, and really just about their experience. So this was a really great activity and helped us continue to build rapport with one another. So something else that we have done is we have read some romance novels. Now, surprisingly, this is their biggest request, is romance novels. They are gigantic Colleen Hoover fans. I think one of the students in book club has probably read every Colleen Hoover book. And that was something I did not expect, but it's been a lot of fun. So after we did read Hopeless by Colleen Hoover, we had some group discussions about the main characters and, the working relationships and interpersonal relationships in the book. Some of the youth, they're very opinionated. They will share like, I didn't like when this character did that. Why did they do that? Or they're very opinionated and they share exactly how they feel. Part of the lesson plan was I did ask the youth to write a letter to someone that they love. And, if there is not someone in their life that they love, I asked them to write a love letter to themselves at a younger age. So something else that we've done is we've done a lesson plan based around children's books. So just in conversations with the youth, they let me know that none of them were read to when they were children. Their parents didn't read to them, their caregivers didn't read to them. They just didn't really have that experience. So when I started naming some titles of children's books to them, really popular children's books, they had never heard of them. So I thought it was important to bring in some children's books from our library and just read them out loud to them so they could really experience like the magic of what it is to read a children's book, but also to help build their literacy skills, right? Because if you're not read those books as children, that's a fundamental step in learning how to read. I also wanted to share this experience with them because some of them will be parents. There are youth incarcerated in detention centers that are already parents. And so I wanted to make sure that they had this experience so that it would be something that they could pass on to their children, should they choose to have them. And, it's really amazing because while reading these children's books out loud, I could kind of see them all begin to relax. And, the carceral facilities can be very intense, emotional, experiences. So to be able to see them really sort of let their guard down and relax and like even see sort of their nervous systems calming while reading these books is probably an experience I will remember forever. So I realized that with some of the books that we had chosen, some students were more able to engage with the material than others. And this is really where I saw the different reading levels start to kind of emerge. Sometimes, like with one of the Colleen Hoover novels, there was a student who, he always wanted to engage in the conversations about the book, but he wasn't, he would let me know that he didn't read this one. And sometimes he would get a little bit agitated if he couldn't read the book. And so what I quickly started thinking about was, okay, how can I make it so that everyone in book club with all their different reading levels can participate? How can I do this, right? So I started purchasing graphic novels because I figured, maybe if you are somebody who's struggling with reading, or you're not very confident with reading, having those images to guide you along in the story can make it so that everyone can participate. And so that was the case. Once we transitioned over to graphic novels, everyone started participating. And something else that I've tried to do to sort of bridge that gap with the reading levels is I tell the students, even if you have not read the book, please come to class because the conversations that we have, I do have some like specific questions I ask them about the text, but then the rest of the conversation really has to do with the themes of the books. And these are conversations that everyone can participate in. In addition, we've also done a lot of different like creative works. So reading the book and then, giving them the supplies where they can draw, has been a really great way for everyone to participate in self-expression and reflection. So we also did a interview workshop. This was actually a request from one of the probation officers that I, talked to. He just said, is there any way that you can purchase some books that are all about interviewing? Because, we want the youth to build these practical skills while they are here so that when they get out, they do have a tool set that will help them navigate reentry. So I did purchase two books, 101 Great Answers to the Toughest Interview Questions and 60 Seconds and You're Hired. So what we did was the youth read through these books. I gave them a worksheet that had a list of several questions that might come up if they are interviewing for, a job in construction or all the different career choices that they were interested in. And so I thought it was very important on the worksheet to make sure to highlight transferable skills because some of the youth in book club, they've been incarcerated since they were 12, 13, 14. So they might have not really had a chance to participate in the workforce. So I thought it was very important to let them know that even if you have not ever held a job, there are so many transferable skills that you probably have that you haven't thought of that, you can apply to these interview questions. So since they do not have computers or access to tablets or anything like that, I did print out a bunch of different sample resumes. And then I also gave them pretty much like a skeletal sort of outline of a resume where they could take a pen and write in their own history or their own skills or education or what that looks like. So at our next meeting, we did a mock interview workshop, and so I was the one that was going to be interviewing them, and they were all very nervous. And for a lot of them, this was their first interview they had ever done. So as an icebreaker, I asked one of the students. I said, "Okay, let's do a mock interview of what you should not do during the interview." Okay. And I said, and let's make it silly and let's make it goofy and do all the wrong things. And so I did have a student who volunteered and, just kind of did all the wrong things, right? Like didn't make eye contact, didn't answer the questions, was a little bit rude, had a little bit of attitude. And so they kind of ran wild with that. And so it got everybody to loosen up. We all laughed. And so then after we did that icebreaker, almost everybody participated in the mock interview. And a lot of them told me, that they had never done an interview before and that they felt like this is going to help them, so that they will be able to get jobs when they, are released. So it was a really positive experience for them and for me as well. So just talking about some of the future activities and starting with my short-term goals for the program, I'd like to continue my monthly book club meetings and focus on one book per month. We're going to continue to explore different genres, many different types of books, because honestly, my ultimate goal with book club is just to get them reading. I don't care what they read as long as they're reading. So, for example, sometimes the students will give me requests for books and I can use some of that grant funding to purchase those books. And so some of the collections that I've purchased are like, I've purchased the whole Wimpy Kids series. I've purchased the whole Goosebumps series, other popular, series that they're interested in, Captain Underpants. Like I have purchased all of that because in my mind, I just want them reading, right? Like I don't care what they want to, what they are reading, just start reading, right? So we're also going to continue with doing some creative activities and art and continue with having those deep discussions about, the content in the books. And what I would really like to do is try to incorporate some guest speakers. I'd like to pick out some books written by people that, were incarcerated, that have, been released and really turned their lives around. So I'm hoping to find some guest speakers that would be willing to Zoom into the facility. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. And now for our more long-term goals, our students have been so inspired by the graphic novels and, just the fact that they could tell their own story. I tell them all the time that their story matters. And I think they are finally starting to believe me. So one of our long-term goals is we're going to write our own graphic novel. And we're very excited about it. It is a very big project. But I thought it was important to really have a long-term project, as some of these youth will be incarcerated for years and years to come at the facility. So we're going to do our own graphic novel. The youth are going to be able to share their own stories. We're trying to figure out how we want to set it up. The youth were thinking that maybe every person could have their own chapter and tell their own short story. Some of the youth, however, they don't feel comfortable telling their own story, or for, their own personal safety and their own, their family safety, they don't feel comfortable sharing, and that's absolutely fine. And I'm 100% supportive of that. So we just really want to use this as a way for them to have some self-expression and healing. I did share with them some of the publications by the Brothers in Pen at San Quentin. And if you're not familiar with that, that was started with a creative writing class. And so they do publish some of the work of the people that are incarcerated there. And when the youth saw that, they were just really blown away. They said things to me like, wow, I can actually make a difference while I am in here. And wow, it would be so cool to like share my story and have my name on something where I could, make myself proud and make my parents proud. They also always do talk about like, well, if we share our story, do you think there's a chance they could make a Netflix series about it? And I'm like, there's always a chance. So they're very interested in being able to tell their own stories. And I'm looking forward to this working on this project with them. So to wrap up, just a few lessons that I've learned so far in my experience. So trust takes time. Like I said before, youth in the system have really been let down by the adults in their lives. Some of the youth explain to me that they don't have parents or they don't have adults in their life that they can really count on. And so the people in the facility become their family, right? And so trust takes a really long time to build. And that's okay. That's part of it. That's part of working with youth that are in these systems. I've been working with them for a little bit over a year now, and they still, are still asking me, okay, are you going to come back? How long are we going to do this? How long are we going to have this program? Just a lot of questions, right? And so I will say something that has helped is every book club meeting, I do bring food. It does come out of my own pocket, but I'm happy to do so. I'll bring in pizzas or I'll just ask them, are there things that you all are really craving? And, sometimes they're like, can you bring us Costco muffins? And I'm like, okay, cool. So bringing food and just trying to make our book club environment as comfortable as possible for everyone, just that aspect of sharing a meal with someone, it really can help with building trust. Also, another lesson is that, respect is earned. Always try and use people first language if you can. I refer to everyone in book club as my student. I treat them as if they were one of my students at my university, right? Make sure you learn their names. I try to learn first names if the student is comfortable. Some students will be comfortable with sharing their first name. Others, they would only like to be referred to as their last name. And that's totally okay with me. Also, a smile, a handshake, a greeting at the door goes a really long way. So this really does depend on the institution that you are at. Some institutions will have no contact, like, physical contact policy. But, after talking with the officer that I work with on our first book club, I made sure that, every student that comes in the room, they give me a handshake or a fist bump. I give them a smile. I ask them how their day is going. And then on the way out, when book club is over, I give everybody a handshake and, fist bump, high five, whatever that is, just to have that like human to human connection. Because I think, based on what the students have shared with me, they feel like the outside world looks at them like they're monsters. And so I really wanted to have a way where I could just treat them just like, any other human, any other student, right? So now they're so used to it. It's like automatic. Come in the room, everybody greets each other, um, and we just kind of fill each other in about what's been going on in life, which is great. Also, this is their home. If you are going into a youth detention center, these are where the students, they do live. So you are entering their home and you are a guest in their home. So I remind myself of that. I think it's a really important reminder to, behave like you are a guest, right? So some of the more personal lessons that I've learned so far, one of the big ones is self-care. So the first couple times when I went to the detention center, um, it it's very emotional. It can be very emotional. I remember after leaving some of our book club meetings, I would get in my car and like the gravity of the situation would really hit me. Like, I'm able to come and go from this facility, and there are children that are incarcerated at this facility. Some of them are as young as 11 years old. And so the gravity of that, it never really escapes you. So I think self-care is really, really important. Like for me, since I am an instructional librarian, the days that I visit juvenile hall, I try really hard to pick days where my workload is lighter, maybe days where I'm not, visiting juvenile hall and then coming back to campus and teaching classes, because it does take up a lot of emotional bandwidth and it's so worth it. But just, if you do choose to start a program like this, just being aware that it's heartbreaking. It really is. I've also learned how to be more flexible. So when I first got started, I would really like thoroughly plan my lesson plans. And, sometimes things wouldn't go as well, and I would kind of beat myself up about it. But I've really learned that there are going to be times where nobody likes the book that you've chosen. Okay. There's going to be times where there are things that are happening behind the scenes at juvenile hall, whether that is some of the long timers are getting released, or there are new people that are joining and throwing the environment kind of off. Um, Maybe, some students can't attend book club that day because now they have a meeting with their lawyer. So, they have to have their meeting with their lawyer. There's a lot of different things that can happen, even sometimes maybe the facilities lets me know like, hey, they have too many programs on this day. Can we push book club to another day? So just learning how to be really flexible, right? And learning that even if your lesson plan or, all these great discussion questions and no one's really in the mood, learning that that's okay. That's gonna happen, and being flexible is just a really big part of it. And then also, just having hope, right? And that kind of ties into the flexibility. Having hope that even if maybe you're only really connecting with a couple students, or maybe, half of your class really doesn't feel like participating that day, just having hope that, this is making a difference. And just keeping that hope is really what helps me to keep going. So I'd like to finish up by just saying some special thank yous. One of the biggest thank yous for me is to Rachel Kinnan at San Francisco Public Library. She's the Jail and Reentry Services Manager. She's been such a fantastic support person for me. I got started and met Rachel because I reached out to her during my first year as a librarian, because I wanted to, volunteer my time to the Jail and Reentry Services. And so Rachel was kind enough to let me help respond to some academic reference letters from folks that are incarcerated in California. And so that's how I really kind of got my start, was by answering these reference letters. And so when I started thinking about juvenile hall, Rachel does have experience as a librarian in juvenile hall. So being able to just ask her a bunch of questions, bounce ideas off of her, she was just a fantastic resource, being able to share, resources with me. Yeah, so I can't thank Rachel enough. And I did include the link in this PowerPoint if you would like to learn more about the amazing things that San Francisco Public Library Jail and Reentry Services does. I'd also like to thank Officer Benjamin Carmona. He is the outreach probation officer at Monterey County Juvenile Hall. He is, really my partner in all of this. He's very supportive. And it's just really easy to tell that he cares about the youth that are incarcerated there, and he wants them to have as many programs and experiences as they can. I'd also like to thank my library interim dean, Jackie Grallo. When I came to her with this program, she was so very supportive, and she really saw the value in it, and encouraged me to continue and pursue it. So I'm really thankful to Jackie. And then also the Pacific Library Partnership. This program, it really would not be possible without their generous gift. So I'm very thankful to PLP. They're a really fantastic organization. And then lastly, big special thanks to the Friends of the San Quentin Prison Library and San Quentin Prison Librarian Gabriel Loiterman. Gabriel is really amazing. He has driven from his location to Monterey and just brought endless boxes of, books that the Friends of San Quentin Prison Library have received. So he has just been wonderful. He's brought down so many books, and every time I bring these books over to Juvenile Hall, the students say that it's like Christmas and they've never seen so many new books. And so, this program would not be possible without all of these wonderful people. And so I'm thankful to each of them. So that's all I have for the end of my presentation. I have my contact information on the screen. Please feel free to reach out to me with any questions. I'm happy to share lesson plans. I'm happy to help and answer any questions that anyone might have. But yeah, now's the opportunity for you all to ask me questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was
Yeah,
fantastic.
thank
Um,
you.
we did have some questions come in through the chat while you were presenting. So I'm going to go through those and then I'll hop
Yeah,
back to the chat to see what we have.
sounds great.
First one is, what's the youngest age in California for youth to be incarcerated?
Oh, that's a good question. I'd honestly have to look that up. But at the juvenile hall that I'm working with, the youngest age, I believe, is 11 years old. That's the youngest child that is incarcerated.
Thank you. Next question. Are these minors who have been convicted of crimes or also awaiting trial? Are there separate facilities for minors awaiting trial? And what materials do they have access to?
So there are minors at this facility, like I said, anywhere from 11 years old to 18 years old. And typically they are awaiting their sentencing. Some of them are being tried in, juvenile court, and then others are being tried as adults. And it really depends on a case by case basis. There are also other facilities in the area, like they're called youth centers, where youth are usually transitioning out of juvenile hall, and they can go to a youth center for about 8 months, and that's part of the process for them to be released and to go home. So one of our book club members, he was 14, and recently, last month, he was released to a youth center. And he told me, he said, Mrs. S, which is what they call me just for kind of privacy purposes. He said, Mrs. S, I've got 8 months, and then I'll see you on the outside, and I'll see you at your library. I'm going to come visit you. And I said, absolutely. I'm thrilled by that, right? So yeah, it really does depend on a case by case basis. But since all of the youth prisons have been shut down, anyone that was incarcerated at a youth prison is now at their local juvenile detention center. Yeah.
Thank you. Are you restricted to only paperbacks in your facility?
Yep, we are only allowed to use paperbacks, and then, any worksheets, no staples. Um, but while we are in the actual classroom, because that's where we do have book club, it's in one of the classrooms that is owned and operated by the Monterey County of Ed. So I'm thankful they let me hold book club in there. But they are allowed to use pencils, use pens, um, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, we are restricted to paperback books, which can be tough because sometimes there are some books that are hardcover that would be great, but got to stick with those paperback.
Kind of following up on that one. So they said your creative programming is amazing. Where do you get inspired? And then someone followed up. It's been tricky here finding projects that don't use any restricted materials.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you. Thank you so much. I've done a bunch of research. I'm trying to see what other juvenile hall librarians are doing, what kind of books they're reading. And then at my library, we do have a makerspace. And so it was really helpful to kind of partner with our makerspace coordinator who, to bounce ideas off of, like, okay, like what can we make that's not going to be any restricted materials? Like, I remember one of the things I had asked was, okay, can we do, I asked the officer, I said, can we do rock painting? And he was like, no, we cannot do rock painting. We cannot have students throwing rocks. And I'm like, okay, all right. Well, can we make, paper flowers? Yes. Can we paint? Absolutely. One of the things that was really helpful was the makerspace coordinator. She gave me a bunch of canvas tote bags. And so one of the activities that we did was we had students decorate canvas tote bags that they were their library book club bags, because one of the issues were the students would show up to book club with none of their materials. And I would be like, where's your books? Where's all your stuff? And so to kind of combat that, we were like, okay, we're going to decorate these canvas bags. And so now every time you come to class, put your materials in your canvas bag and bring it along with you. So yeah, it's been a lot of research, trying to read blogs. Blogs have been so amazing. There are some fantastic blogs out there for librarians that work with incarcerated youth, stuff on YouTube, and then really, yeah, working with the makerspace coordinator and, okay, here's my list of materials that we can't use. What can we do with them? Yeah, I hope that answers your question. I know it can be tough because there's a lot of prohibited items.
Thank you. Yes, a lot to think about.
Yeah, absolutely.
So two more questions. Do your students ever talk about what will happen when they're released?
You know, it's hard, right? We've gotten to a point where, they trust me enough. They kind of give me updates on their cases. And, they know that I did go to law school. And, before I became a librarian, I wanted to become a children's lawyer. So they know a little bit about my background. And so they will share certain things about their cases with me. Some days I can really tell when, they've been to court and they've had a really frustrating experience. Um, COVID has really delayed and pushed out a lot of their cases. So, like I said, we have one member of book club who has been awaiting sentencing for 4 years. And, they've shared with me that it's very hard to be in that state of limbo. A lot of them, they tell me, like, Mrs. S, I would rather know if I have to serve 20 years and know now versus not knowing what's going to happen. So there is a lot of uncertainty and frustration around that. And that does kind of trickle into a loss of hope. A lot of them in the beginning with book club, when I would ask them, what types of careers are you all interested in? Some of them, they couldn't even think of the future. They cannot even imagine the future where they are back out in society and can have a job. So that's a really real thing, is trying to, keep them hopeful, talk to them about, future opportunities, maybe even going to college. But for some of them, they're shut down because they don't know what's going to happen. And a lot of them, I know, they're very thankful that they can stay at juvenile hall until they turn 25. Just because there have been, like I said, some transfers from the youth prisons, and the youth prison system, if you Google it and read some of the articles or information out there, a lot of the youth that were in those systems were, treated very poorly. And so having them come to juvenile hall, for them, juvenile hall is really like a reprieve from where they were incarcerated. But yeah, it's really tough. It's really tough because there's a lot that goes on with court, with their lawyers, with these systems, and it's really very tough. I think a lot of them have just tried to focus on their day-to-day life, not thinking ahead too much in the future, and just really, being present in the now. And I do try with book club. We do have some, serious, heavy conversations, but I also try to make it a place where in the moment, like, they can create, like they can create art, they can do creative activities, they can, really dive into these books so that it gives them a place to go in their head. And that's something I've shared with them too. Like, you're stuck here in this facility, right? But when you read these books, you can go anywhere in your mind, right? So that's it's kind of how it goes. But yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. Before we have two more questions, I want to be respectful of your time because we have hit 2 o'clock. If you have a few more minutes to answer those, if not, we can
Yeah,
do. Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, the next one is, have you faced any restrictions or challenges on the content of your books?
No, I haven't. In the beginning, I would submit which books I would like to do and the lesson plans that I would like to do. And, I would submit them, and then the officer would be like, these are great, these are fantastic. And then we've just built such a trust with me and the officer and the director of juvenile hall that I'm pretty much able to do whatever book I would like, with not a whole lot of restrictions, which is really great. So that's also something to keep in mind if you are considering a program like this. Really, if you can find an officer that is supportive, or a teacher in juvenile hall, or one of their counselors, finding someone on the inside that you can kind of build a relationship with will really help. So no, I don't have a lot of restrictions, thankfully, but I know that at other institutions that can be very different. So I don't think my experience is the norm with being able to just kind of, hey, this is the book we're doing today, everybody. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So maybe the last question, we'll see if the chat has anything else at the moment. But so the last one, the PLP grant says that it needs to be tech related. How do you work that into your visits?
So for me, I really focused the PLP grant on like innovation and the fact that the students do not have any access to technology. So this program is really kind of bridging a gap where the students do not have, they don't have access to like information on the internet. The only access to information they really have are for, the classes that they take and then the books that they have in the library. So that's really how I focused my grant proposal. Just really, there is no access to technology. And this program can kind of help build that and give these students access to information that they could otherwise get with technology. And if anyone has any other questions about the grant or the grant process, please shoot me an email. I'm happy to share, my experience and what my proposal looked like. Oh,
That's
but one more thing I did want to include is that the really cool thing about the PLP grants are that you can technically apply to kind of like, what is it called? Like to reproduce my program at a different juvenile hall. So that is an option. You can apply for funding where you can recreate my same program at another institution. So yeah, like I said, if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to help with that.
that's so amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you for this fantastic presentation.
Thank you.
I just want to remind everyone the recording will be available on the Lilly webpage by the end of the day on Friday. And yeah, so just thank you so much.
Thank you all so much. Let me stop sharing my screen. But seriously, thank you for choosing to spend your afternoon with me. I'm thankful to all of you that are interested in working with youth. So please reach out if you have any questions, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you, everyone.